I'd like to take you back in time to 1960, the summer, in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, at the intersection of Main Street and New York Avenue. And I was there at that intersection, 11 years old, handing out bumper stickers for John F. Kennedy. That's where it began, in terms of my collecting memorabilia related to John F. Kennedy, and then Robert Kennedy, and then Edward Kennedy. And this was the very first thing that I ever received, and it's a little PT-109 pin used in the Wisconsin primary, and it says JK60 on it. And because I was a volunteer, they awarded me with this pin. And over a period, 50 years of collecting, accumulated quite a nice assortment of mementos. One of the most significant items in my collection is one of President Kennedy's rocking chairs. Janet Travell, his personal physician, was instrumental in advising him to sit in a rocking chair which would take the pressure off of his back. The rocking chair gave him relief. So there were rocking chairs in several places within the White House, and this is one of the rocking chairs that moved around a little bit. It was used by the President in the Oval Office. There is a photograph included with this lot that shows the President sitting in this chair, and beside him on the sofa is, at that time, astronaut John Glenn, who later became, of course, a United States Senator. This chair is particularly remarkable because it was in fact used by the President in the Oval Office. Many rocking chairs that we see that come to the auction marketplace were used maybe in other rooms of the White House or maybe up at Hyannisport and so forth, but the fact that there is photographic evidence of the President sitting in this chair and using it in the Oval Office makes it quite special. When it came time to choose a presidential portrait artist for President Kennedy and for herself as First Lady, for the official portraits that were then going to hang in the White House in perpetuity, Mrs. Kennedy chose Aaron Schickler. Mr. Schickler created 4 charcoal sketches, which he presented to Mrs. Kennedy. She selected one of those, from which Aaron Schickler then made the oil painting, life-size, that hangs currently in the White House. He gave Mrs. Kennedy one of those 4 drawings. It may have been that one, for her own possession. My understanding is that he kept then the other 3. This particular drawing is one of those. Original charcoal drawing study for the presidential portrait. It's a remarkable piece because it shows the process that we often don't have access to of the artist's progressive thinking toward the end result of an official presidential portrait. Every president of the United States is given at the beginning of his term several sets of flags, the American flag and the presidential flag. One of these sets would stand in the Oval Office, another in the East Room of the White House, another set travels with the President. This particular set stood behind President Kennedy's desk in the Oval Office, the American flag to his right and the presidential flag to his left. The presidential flag bears the seal of the President of the United States. Only the President is permitted to use the seal. The eagle holds in his right talon the branches of the olive tree, and in his left talon arrows, representing obviously the quest for peace, but the preparation for war if necessary. The presidential seal has the eagle facing to the right, facing the direction of the olive branch, which suggests that the hope of the President and of the country that he or she represents is that America will take a stance of peace in the world and lead the community of nations in peace. These flags were in the Oval Office during the 1,000 days of the Kennedy presidency. and they are remarkably significant in having stood witness to those days. In October of 1962, the world held its breath for 13 days. There was a crisis over the island of Cuba. I remember as a child, every night watching TV, watching the news to see the developments, which were kept very quiet. We didn't know really what was going on. During those 13 days, President Kennedy met with members of his cabinet and also other advisors, and certainly the Joint Chiefs of Staff, trying to develop a strategy of how to respond to this threat just several miles off of our coast. When it was all over, 13 days, the Cuban Missile Crisis, President Kennedy wanted to give a gift to those people that had surrounded him and supported him in this process of strategic decision-making. And then he actually designed something himself, which he had fabricated by Tiffany & Company, a sterling silver calendar page of October 1962, mounted on a little wooden base, with those 13 days more deeply etched than the other dates of that month. He had then the initials of the recipient engraved by Tiffany's in the upper left-hand corner, and his own initials, JFK, engraved in the upper right-hand corner. And he gave these to this inner circle of advisors. This calendar is not only important because the president himself designed it and gave it to one of his trusted inner circle advisors, but it also represents a process of strategic thinking that went all the way from a military response to an international crisis to its peaceful resolution. On January 20th, 1961, John F. Kennedy took the oath of office as President of the United States, the youngest president. And in his inaugural address, he spoke of the torch being passed to a new generation of Americans. That wasn't just poetry, it was a pragmatic fact. And this was a president who was an idealist and a realist. He was a romantic and a pragmatist. And these are not contradictory terms. These are, in a way, it's a coincidence of opposites. He combined all of these things together in his presidency. It was a time of great awakening and a great spirit, the new frontier. In that brief period of time, America turned a corner. And what we were showing to the world is that we are not only a strong nation, but we are a nation that is generous and that we wish to be benevolent. Just as on the presidential seal, the eagle is turning to the right, facing the olive branch that he carries in his right talon. When President Kennedy was doodling one day, he doodled the presidential seal. In both talons, the eagle is carrying olive branches. This represented John Kennedy's true hope for this country and for the world.